I was slicing into a medium rare steak at Veludo, the kind of place where you drop $100 on a bottle of wine and feel like a king. It was our 15th anniversary, and the candlelight made Claire's eyes glow like they did when we were 22, sneaking beers at a dive bar. 50 guests, friends, colleagues, even the mayor clinked glasses around us. In Willow Creek's fanciest joint, I leaned back, savoring the moment, thinking this was what a perfect life felt like. Then Claire stood up, her smile sharp as a switchblade, and raised her glass. "I'm celebrating tonight," she said, her voice cutting through the chatter. "Not just our anniversary, Ethan, but my freedom. I'm leaving you. I've chosen Victor Langston." The room froze. Victor, the slick, talking mayor with a Rolex and a campaign grin, sat at the head table smirking like he'd just won a poker game. My stomach dropped like I'd missed a step on a dark staircase. Claire's words hit like a sledgehammer, each syllable cracking the foundation of 20 years together. Our twins, Liam and Noah, sat across from me, their faces pale eyes darting between us. I wanted to laugh, to call it a sick joke, but her gaze was cold final. She'd planned this, rehearsed it, and I was the last to know. Before I could choke him out a word, a deafening crash shattered the silence. The chandelier above us snapped, plummeting like a meteor. Glass exploded and flames roared from a spilled candle licking the tablecloth. Instinct kicked in. I dove to shield Liam and Noah, but a tongue of fire caught my arm. Pain seared through me, white hot as screams filled the air. I stumbled, vision blurring, and saw Claire step back, untouched, her arm looped through Victor's. They didn't look back as chaos swallowed the room. I came to in an ambulance, the stench of singed skin clinging to me. My arm was wrapped in gauze, but the real wound was deeper, clawing at my chest. Claire hadn't just left me, she'd humiliated me, gutted me in front of everyone who mattered. I kept replaying her voice, that polished cruelty, in Victor's smug nod like I was some chump they'd outplayed. My boys, God, what were they thinking? Had they known? The thought made my throat tighten, but I swallowed it down. I wasn't going to break, not yet. Lying in there, the siren wailing, I felt the weight of betrayal settle in heavy as wet concrete. This wasn't just an affair, it was a public execution, timed and staged to destroy me. My life, our home, my work restoring. Willow Creek's old theaters, the late nights planning a future with Claire, felt like a house of cards collapsing in one brutal gust. I clenched my fist, ignoring the sting of the burn. I didn't know how or why, but I knew one thing: Claire and Victor had underestimated me. That was their first mistake. As the ambulance rolled through Willow Creek's quiet streets, I stared at the ceiling, my mind racing. The pain in my arm was nothing compared to the fire in my gut. I wasn't just shocked, I was awake, and I'd be damned if I let them bury me. The hospital discharged me at dawn, the sky over Willow Creek bruised purple. I drove home in silence, the pickup's engine rumbling like my pulse. The house loomed dark, a shell of what it used to be. Inside, the air was stale, heavy with the ghost of Claire's perfume. I didn't flip on the lights, didn't need to see the family photos mocking me from the walls. My arm throbbed under the bandage, but it was nothing compared to the hollow ache carving out my chest. I dropped my keys on the counter as a clink echoing in the quiet. My boots scuffed the hardwood as I moved to the kitchen. I filled a glass with tap water. The faucet's groan, matching the weight in my gut. Drank it slow, staring at the sink where Claire used to hum while washing dishes. I set the glass down, careful like it might shatter if I wasn't gentle. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from Javier, probably, or nosy neighbors. I let it die unplugged. No one needed to hear from me right now. I wandered to the living room, pausing at Claire's armchair. Her knitting basket sat there, needles poking out like accusations. I picked up a half-finished scarf, the yarn soft, and folded it neatly. Placed it back. Didn't throw it, didn't tear it apart. My hands needed something to do, anything to keep from clenching into fists. I sank onto the couch, the leather creaking under me, and stared at the ceiling. The fan spun, lazily counting seconds I couldn't afford to waste. My mind kept circling back to Liam and Noah. Were they with Claire, with Victor? The thought of them in his mansion eating breakfast at his polished table made my jaw tighten. I wanted to call to hear their voices, but what would I say? Your mom gutted me, but I'm still your dad. I leaned forward, elbows on knees, and scrubbed my face with my good hand. The stubble scratched, grounding me. I wasn't going to cry. Wasn't going to scream. Not yet. I stood restless and opened the fridge. A six-pack of Coors sat untouched. I grabbed one, popped the tab, but didn't drink. Just held it, the cold metal biting my palm. I thought about the life I'd built, nights sketching blueprints for the Paramount Theater, weekends coaching, Little League mornings kissing. Claire, goodbye. All of it gone like a blueprint, erased in a single stroke. The betrayal wasn't just hers, it was Victor's, the town's everyone who'd clapped at her speech. I set the beer down untouched and walked to the window. Outside, Willow Creek slept oblivious. The street lights flickered, casting shadows on the lawn. I pressed my forehead to the glass, the coolness steadying me. My reflection stared back, a stranger with tired eyes and a bandaged arm. I didn't know what came next, but I knew I couldn't stay here frozen. Claire had drawn first blood. Fine, I'd figure out my move, quiet and deliberate, like laying the foundation for a building meant to last. As the sun crept over the horizon, I turned from the window. The house was still, but I wasn't not anymore. The dawn light sliced through the blinds, carving stripes across my face. I stood in the living room, the house a tomb around me, and memories clawed their way up uninvited. My chest tightened like a vice was squeezing out the last of my air. I didn't want to go back, but the past was a stubborn ghost, dragging me to days when Willow Creek felt like home, not a battlefield. 5 years ago, Claire and I were grilling burgers in the backyard, the kind of summer evening where the air smelled of charcoal and cut grass. Liam and Noah, barely 9, chased fireflies. Their laughter bouncing off the oak trees. Claire handed me a cold root beer, her fingers brushing mine, and whispered, "We're lucky, Ethan." Her smile was soft, real, the kind that made me believe we'd grow old together. I'd spend days restoring the Paramount Theater, then come home to her, my anchor. We'd sit on the porch swing, planning camping trips to Yellowstone, dreaming of a cabin by the lake. But the cracks came slow and sneaky. 2 summers back, Claire started missing those backyard barbecues. She'd say, "Town council's got me swamped," and I'd nod, trusting her. She'd leave the house in sundresses, her hair curled, but her eyes didn't meet mine anymore. Once I found her in the garage, talking low on her phone. "Just work," she said, snapping it shut. I let it slide like a fool. Noah mentioned her taking long drives alone, and I chalked it up to stress. "She's fine," I told myself, ignoring the knot in my gut. The worst was last fall at the county fair. We used to love it, cotton candy, Ferris wheel, Claire cheering as I won her a stuffed bear at the ring toss. But that night she barely spoke. She wandered off saying she needed air, and I found her by the funnel cake stand, laughing with Victor Langston. He leaned in close, his hand grazing her arm. "Just catching up," she said when I walked over, her voice clipped. Victor flashed his politician's grin and said, "Great work on the theater, Ethan." I nodded, but my blood ran cold. That moment stuck a splinter I couldn't pull out. Now standing in this empty house, those memories burned like acid. The Claire who'd kissed me under the stars was gone, replaced by someone who'd orchestrated my downfall. Had she ever loved me, or was I just a stepping stone to Victor's world of power and flash? My hands shook, not with rage, but with regret for the years I'd poured into a lie, for the trust I'd handed over blindly. Liam and Noah's faces haunted me. Had she poisoned them against me too? I gripped the back of a chair, knuckles white, fighting the urge to rip it apart. Those days of fireflies and fairgrounds were dead, but their weight lingered, pressing me into the ground. I couldn't stay trapped in what was Claire's betrayal had rewritten my past, but I'd be damned if it defined my future. As the morning sun climbed, I let the memories fade, steeling myself for what came next. Morning crept into the house, a gray haze pooling on the floorboards. I paced the living room, my boots thudding like a metronome, unable to shake the ghosts of yesterday's memories. My throat was dry, my pulse heavy, as if my body knew something my mind refused to admit. The betrayal was no longer just a wound. It was a map, and I was starting to trace the paths. I'd ignored the signals I'd dismissed as noise. Last spring, Claire started carrying a new leather planner, its pages locked with a tiny gold clasp. She'd jot notes during dinner, her pen scratching, while Liam and Noah swapped stories about soccer practice. "Just organizing my schedule," she'd say, sliding it into her purse. When I glanced over, I didn't push, figuring it was her way of juggling town council duties. But the planner never left her side, like a secret she was guarding with a smile. She began wearing lipstick, a bold red that stood out against her usual jeans and t-shirts. She'd apply it in the hallway mirror before heading out, saying she had meetings at the community center. I'd catch a whiff of her perfume, something floral, expensive, as she breezed past her heels, clicking on the tile. Once I offered to drive her, but she waved me off. "No need, Ethan. I'm good." Her tone was light, but it landed like a door slamming shut. Then there were the late-night texts. I'd be in the garage sanding wood for a theater restoration. When her phone would buzz on the counter, she'd snatch it up, her fingers flying, and mutter, Work stuff. One night I saw Victor's name flash on the screen before she tilted it away. My gut twisted, but I swallowed the question. My Ethan Caldwell, the guy who fixed things, buildings, not suspicions. I told myself it was nothing, just council business. Noah dropped a hint last winter, his voice casual over breakfast. Mom's been at the diner a lot with that mayor guy. He was buttering toast, oblivious to the weight of his words. I paused, coffee mug halfway to my mouth, and asked, "What do you mean a lot?" He shrugged. "Dunno, saw them there twice last week." Claire walked in, then cutting us off with a quick, "Ready for schoolboys." I let it go, but the image stuck. Claire and Victor, heads bent over coffee mugs, sharing whispers I wasn't privy to. Standing here now. Those moments stacked like bricks building a wall I couldn't unsee. Each sign had been a flare, bright and obvious, but I'd turned away, too busy with my own work, too trusting to question. The planner, the lipstick, the text, Noah's offhand comment, they weren't random. They were pieces of a puzzle Claire had been assembling, with Victor's hand guiding hers. My chest burned, not with anger, but with the shame of my own blindness. I'd let her drift, let him step in, and now I was paying the price. I stopped pacing, my shadow still on the floor. The signs had been there screaming. I hadn't listened then, but I was listening now, and I wouldn't ignore them again. The morning air turned sharp, biting at my knuckles as I stood frozen in the living room. The weight of Claire's hidden signals, her planner, her late-night texts pressed against my ribs, a dull ache that fueled a new resolve. I wasn't the guy who'd stand by letting her and Victor dismantle my life. My jaw clenched, and I moved deliberate, like a man laying out tools for a job that couldn't wait. This wasn't about rage, it was about reclaiming what was mine. I started in my office, a cramped corner of the house, stacked with blueprints for the Paramount Theater. I pulled out every contract tied to the restoration, spreading them across the desk like a battle map. My eyes scanned for discrepancies, anything Victor might exploit to tear down the historic district. I called Diane Kessler, a lawyer who'd helped me navigate zoning laws. "Before I need you to dig into these," I said, voice steady. "Check for forged signatures, anything off." She didn't ask questions, just said, "I'm on it." Her confidence grounded me, a lifeline in the storm. Next, I texted Javier Ortiz, my old high school buddy who'd never let me down. "Meet me at the shop," I wrote, referring to his auto repair garage, a place where we could talk without prying eyes. There, over the hum of a power wrench, I asked him to keep tabs on Victor's moves at City Hall. "Watch who he meets, what he says," I instructed, handing him a burner phone I'd bought at a gas station. Javier nodded, his grease-stained hands pocketing the device. "Got your back, man," he said, and I felt a flicker of control return. Back home, I tackled the digital trail. I hooked up an external drive to my laptop and backed up every email, every text Claire had sent me in the last year. Most were mundane grocery lists, reminders about parent-teacher conferences, but I wasn't taking chances. I created a password-protected folder, stashing it like ammo for a fight I knew was coming. Then I drove to the bank, opened a new account under my name only, and transferred half my savings. If Claire was playing dirty, I wouldn't be caught flat-footed. My final move was at the theater itself. I slipped in after hours, the old building's creaks familiar as a friend, hit a small voice recorder in the meeting room, where Victor's council buddies liked to gather. It was a long shot, but I needed proof of their plans to gut the historic district. As I taped it under a table, my heart pounded, not with fear, but with purpose. Claire's betrayal had cracked me open, but it hadn't broken me. Every step, every calculated move was a brick in the wall I was building to protect myself, my boys, and my work. Back in my truck, I grip on the steering wheel, the leather cool under my palms. The pain of Claire's deception still gnawed, a raw edge I couldn't dull. But I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was plotting, precise as a craftsman, ready to turn their game against them. The sun dipped low, painting Willow Creek gold. I started the engine, knowing this was only the beginning. Twilight draped Willow Creek in shadows as I pulled out of the Paramount Theater. The voice recorder's weight in my pocket, a quiet promise. My truck's headlights cut through the dusk, but my mind was wired, replaying the steps I'd taken to outmaneuver Claire and Victor. I'd laid the groundwork, but the truth was still a puzzle with missing pieces. My chest burned with a restless edge, a hunger for answers that wouldn't let me sleep. Javier called as I hit the highway. "Get to my shop now." His voice was tight, like he'd seen a snake in the grass. I floored it. Arriving at his garage in 10 minutes, the neon sign flickering above the bay doors. Inside, Javier stood by a workbench, a USB drive in his hand. "Found this in Victor's office. Trash," he said, eyes hard. You're not going to like it. He plugged it into his laptop and my pulse hammered as files loaded spreadsheets, emails, and a folder labeled Willow Redevelopment. The screen glowed with betrayal. Victor's plan wasn't just to steal Claire. He aimed to bulldoze the historic district, including my Paramount Theater for a sprawling mall complex. Emails between him and Marcus Claire's brother detailed bribes to council members with dollar amounts that made my stomach churn. One document, a fake safety report, claimed the theater was a structural hazard signed with my name in a scrawl that wasn't mine. My fist tightened, nails digging into my palms. Then came the gut punch. An email from Marcus to Victor dated 6 months back read, "Claire's on board. She'll testify against Ethan for $50,000. My breath caught sharp as a blade. Claire hadn't just left me. She'd sold me out, trading our life for cash. Javier cursed under his breath. "They played you dirty, man," he said, slamming the laptop shut. I knotted my throat too tight to speak the words searing into my brain like a brand. I drove home under a starless sky, the USB burning a hole in my jacket. My mind churned, piecing together the conspiracy. Victor's mall wasn't about progress. It was a money grab greased with corruption. Marcus was his enforcer, and Claire. My Claire was their willing pawn. The theater, my life's work, was collateral damage in their scheme to bury me. My knuckles whitened on the steering wheel, not from grief, but from a cold surgical fury. They'd underestimated me, thinking I'd crumble. In my driveway, I sat engine off, the silence deafening. The betrayal cut deeper than I'd imagined, a wound that pulsed with every heartbeat. Claire's face, her laugh, her touch flashed in my mind, now tainted by her greed. I thought of Liam and Noah, wondering if they'd been fed her lies. The pain was a live wire, but I didn't flinch. I'd built structures to last. Now I'd build a plan to tear their lies apart. I stepped out the night air, cold against my face. The USB was my weapon, proof of their rot. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. It was for my boys, my work, and the truth. Victor and Claire had drawn the battle lines. I'd make sure they regretted it. The night hung heavy, a blanket of coal over Willow Creek as I climbed out of my truck. The USB's truth still searing my thoughts. My boots crunched on the gravel driveway. Each step a vow to turn Claire and Victor's betrayal into their undoing. My heart thumped, not with despair, but with the steady rhythm of a man who'd found his footing on a crumbling ledge. I wasn't their victim anymore. I was the hunter, and it was time to set the snare. In my workshop, surrounded by chisels and sawdust, I mapped out the plan. First, I called Elena Marquez, a local reporter with a nose for scandal. "I've got dirt on Victor," I said, my voice low, like I was passing a grenade. "Meet me at the diner midnight." She agreed, no hesitation. At the Greasy Spoon, under flickering fluorescent lights, I slid her a copy of the USB's files. Her eyes widened at the forged safety report and Claire's payoff email. "This'll blow the town open," she said, tucking the drive into her jacket. I nodded, feeling the first spark of triumph. Next, I played Victor's game. I texted Claire from a cheap prepaid phone. "Let's settle this. Name the place," she replied fast, too fast, suggesting a coffee shop downtown. I agreed, but I wasn't going. Instead, I rigged a small audio bug under the shop's corner booth, where she'd likely sit with Victor. My hands moved with the precision of wiring a circuit, every motion deliberate. If they whispered one incriminating word, I'd have it on tape. Then I leaned into their arrogance. I leaked a rumor through Javier that I was giving up on the Paramount Theater, citing personal issues. It was bait, and Victor bit hard. He announced a press conference at City Hall to unveil Willow Creek's future, a clear move to fast-track his mall project. I slipped a tiny camera into the hall's chandelier, its lens trained on the podium. Every lie he told, every smirk would be mine to expose. My final play was at the theater itself. I met Diane, my lawyer, in the empty auditorium, its velvet seats swallowing our voices. I handed her the original USB and a dossier of Victor's bribes. "File an injunction," I told her. "Stall his permits until Elena's story drops." She scanned the files, her pen tapping like a war drum. "They won't see this coming," she said, and I felt the gears of my plan lock into place. As I drove back under a moonless sky, my insides churned. Claire's betrayal still stung, a phantom pain that flared when I pictured her with Victor, laughing at my expense. I gripped the wheel, my calluses catching the leather, and pushed the hurt down. This wasn't about revenge. It was about justice, about protecting Liam and Noah from a world that chewed up trust. I'd lost my wife, maybe my boys' faith, but I hadn't lost myself. Parked outside my house, I exhaled the truck's cab, a cocoon of quiet. The trap was set invisible and tight. Victor and Claire thought they'd won, but they'd walked into my crosshairs. Tomorrow, their world would start to crack, and I'd be there watching, ready to finish what they started. Dawn broke over Willow Creek, a razor's edge of light splitting the horizon. I stood outside City Hall, my breath fogging in the crisp air. The trap I'd set now, a coiled spring ready to snap. Victor's press conference loomed his chance to sell his mall dream to the town. My pulse thrummed a low drum of anticipation, but beneath it a raw ache lingered. Claire's treachery a scar that wouldn't fade. I wasn't here to gloat. I was here to end their game. Inside the hall buzzed with reporters, council members, and curious locals, packed shoulder to shoulder. Victor took the stage, his tie crisp, his smile, a polished veneer. He waved a glossy blueprint, preaching progress for Willow Creek. I stood at the back, arms crossed, my camera feed streaming to Elena's laptop in her news van outside. Then it hit. Elena's voice cut through the PA system, her expose blasting from hidden speakers. Victor Langston's redevelopment is a lie, she declared as my footage played on a giant screen. Victor bribing contractors, his voice clear as day. The crowd gasped, heads swiveling. Victor's face drained to ash, his blueprint slipping to the floor. My audio bugs recording followed Claire's voice admitting to the $50,000 in payoff to smear me. Whispers turned to shouts. Federal agents stormed in, badges flashing, their boots echoing like thunder. They cuffed Victor mid-sentence, his protests drowned by the crowd's roar. I caught Claire's eye across the room. Her lips parted, hands trembling, as she backed toward the exit, only to be stopped by a marshal. Outside, chaos reigned. News vans clogged Main Street, cameras swarming as Marcus, Claire's brother, was dragged from a taxi, his briefcase spilling cash onto the pavement. Diane's injunction had frozen Victor's permits, and Elena's article, now viral, detailed every forged document, every dirty deal. Locals gawked, some jeering, others silent, as the town's golden boy fell. I leaned against a lamppost, the cold metal grounding me, watching the collapse I'd engineered unfold like a demolition. My chest tightened, not with joy, but with a heavy clarity. Claire's betrayal had carved me hollow, and seeing her crumble didn't fill the void. I thought of Liam and Noah safe with Javier for now, and wondered what they'd make of their mother's fall. The pain of losing her, our life, our trust, surged a tide I couldn't outrun. Yet standing here watching justice take hold, I felt a balance settle like a level finding true. This wasn't about me winning, it was about the truth breaking free. I turned away as Victor's motorcade vanished, sirens fading into the morning. The crowd's noise dulled to a hum, and I walked toward my truck, the keys heavy in my pocket. Claire's face haunted me, her shock the mirror to my own, when she'd shattered our world. I didn't hate her, not anymore, just pitied the choices that led her here. The fight wasn't over. I had my boys to protect, a theater to save. But for now, their scheme was dust, and I was still standing scarred, but unbroken, ready for whatever came next. Midday sun scorched Willow Creek, its glare bouncing off the glass doors of Diane's law office. I walked away from the chaos of City Hall, my boots steady on the sidewalk, but my insides churned like a storm-battered lake. Victor's downfall was public, his lies exposed, yet Claire remained a loose thread in my unraveling world. I needed to cut it clean to sever the past that still clawed at my resolve. This meeting would end. It her hold her shadow. Our history. Inside, the office smelled of coffee and ink, a sterile calm against the fire in my chest. Claire sat across a polished table, her posture rigid, eyes sunken, no trace of the woman who'd once planned our future over diner milkshakes. Diane slid the divorce papers toward me, her pen, a silent sentinel. I scanned the terms. I'd keep the house, gain custody of Liam and Noah, and Claire's boutique would transfer to a trust for the boys when they turned 18. It was fair, surgical, final. Claire's gaze flickered to me, searching, but I held steady, my face a mask of stone. Ethan, she started, voice thin. Can we talk? Just us, I shook my head, my throat tight with the weight of her choices. No need, I said, my words clipped, deliberate. We're done, Claire. Don't call, don't write. The boys are with me now. Her lips quivered, but no tears came. She nodded, signing the papers with a trembling hand, her pen scratching like a nail on a coffin. Diane collected the documents, her nod confirming it was over. I stood chair scraping the floor and walked out without a backward glance. The door clicked shut behind me, a sound as final as a lock snapping into place. Outside, the air was thick, heavy with the promise of rain. I leaned against my truck, the metal warm under my palms, and let the moment sink in. Claire was gone, not just from my life, but from the man I'd been, the one who trusted too easily. My heart ached, a dull pulse of loss for the years we'd shared road trips to the Grand Tetons, late-night talks about the boys' futures. Her betrayal had torched those memories, leaving ash where loved ones stood. I thought of Liam and Noah, their trust in her fractured, and my role now to shield them from further harm. The pain wasn't anger anymore. It was a quiet grief, a recognition that some breaks couldn't be mended. I climbed into the truck. Engines rumble, a steady anchor. Driving through town, I passed the shuttered storefronts. Victor's scheme had threatened now, safe because of me. That was my victory, not this divorce, not Claire's defeat. I didn't need her regret or her apologies. They were hollow, useless. What I needed was to move forward, to rebuild a life for my sons, to finish the Paramount Theater as a testament to what endured. The road stretched ahead, lined with cottonwoods, swaying in the breeze. I exhaled, the weight lifting. Not gone, but lighter. Claire was the past, a chapter closed. My future was with my boys, my work, and the man I was becoming. One who'd learned to stand alone and still stand tall. Dusk painted Willow Creek in hues of amber, the kind that made the world feel softer. Forgiving, I drove away from Diane's office, the divorce papers, a settled weight, and felt the road beneath my truck hum with possibility. Claire was a closed door, but my sons and my purpose were windows flung wide open. My heart still carried the bruise of her deceit, a tender spot I'd learned to live with, but I was no longer defined by it. I was rebuilding brick by brick on my own terms. A year later, I stood in the Paramount Theater's restored lobby, its marble floors gleaming under new chandeliers. Liam and Noah flanked me, their ties slightly crooked, grinning as the town applauded. The theater's grand reopening was my triumph, a monument to what I'd fought to save. A local councilman pinned a preservation award to my jacket, his speech praising my unyielding spirit. I knotted my throat tight, not from pride, but from the quiet joy of seeing my boys' eyes shine with respect. At home, our new place, a modest ranch house near the river, buzzed with life. Over pizza nights, Liam debated college majors while Noah sketched comic book heroes. Their laughter stitching up the tears, Claire's absence left. I'd taken up woodworking, carving bookshelves in the garage, the scent of pine grounding me. One evening, I found a handwritten note from Noah tucked in my toolbox. "Thanks for not giving up, Dad." I keep it in my wallet, a talisman against doubt, proof I was more than my scars. My latest project broke ground on the old Voluto lot, now the Phoenix Community Center, a place for art classes and youth programs. I walked the site at sunrise, blueprints in hand, envisioning a legacy for Willow Creek's kids, including mine. The work filled the hollow spaces, not erasing Claire's betrayal, but giving me purpose beyond it. I'd lost a marriage, nearly lost my son's trust, yet found a strength I hadn't known I had, one forged in silence, not vengeance. The ache of Claire's choices lingers, a faint echo when I pass her old boutique, now a trust for the boys. I don't hate her. I pity her, trapped by her own greed. My inner conflict between the man who loved her and the one who survived her has settled into a hard-won peace. I coach Liam's soccer team at cheer, Noah's art shows, and sleep soundly, knowing I'm enough for them. Willow Creek sees me not as a victim, but as a builder, a father, a man who stood tall when the ground shook. As I look back, I wonder about resilience, how we rise from ashes, how we redefine home after it's torn apart. I've found mine, but I'm curious about yours. What's pulled you through your darkest moments? What's the one thing that kept you going when trust was broken? Share your story. I'd like to know how you rebuilt, because no one walks this road alone.